Welcome to the Friday Power Lunch, a weekly show amplifying the voices of the Virginia grassroots. Each week, we provide engaging conversations about politics, culture, and women making change. Produced by the unstoppable women of Network Nova, our motto is, when we vote, we win. The Friday Power Lunch is recorded before a live Zoom audience. Follow us on social media. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and show us some love and become a sponsor through Patreon. The Friday Power Lunch. Badass women getting things done.
So I'm so glad you're here. So I'm so glad you're in the room. And it is January 19th, and welcome to the Friday Power Lunch. How exciting. I am Catherine White, your host, bringing you the guests, the issues, the actions, because, man, we fuel the grassroots. We want to get things done, and we also want to make politics fun. I'm just going to say tequila, and let's get perked up. We hope you have your coffee. We hope it's strong. We hope you're cozy and warm because, again, if you're in school, and we know that there's moms and there's parents in this room and teachers that are like dealing with kids at home and they're out sledding, so good for that. Good for them having some fun on this day. But today, our theme on episode 3, season 4 is going to be about protecting public schools and send in those extremists packing. I want to tell you about the guests. We're going to come straight out with some fun with the trailblazer. Lindsay Davis Stover is here. She is co-founder of Tequila 1951, because we want to start with some fun. We want to make sure we don't forget how we love to center change makers and disruptors. And then we're going to go straight into a little chat with Lindley. Thorne is here from Real Ground Game, a badass who has been in this space helping democracy by helping candidates in rural areas. So we're so excited that she will be here to be with me throughout the whole show. And also, we are so excited Karin Chenoweth will be here. She is the founder of Democracy in Education. What a simple, great way to name an organization that does just that, centers democracy, students in education, and we'll talk about what has she been doing with candidates to help school board candidates be successful to make sure we do protect these school boards for sure. Michael Cook is here all the way from Texas. I don't know if it's snowing in Texas, but Michael Cook is here. He's a school board member from Plano, Texas. You won't want to miss his story. And Betsy Connolly is here, co-founder of Canoho Together. So excited to learn about her work in this space. And this is going to be, again, a great roadmap that we can use some of these takeaways about how we can implement them now and into the future. And to put a little bit of Virginia spin on it, we have Loretta Daniels here, school board member from the Salem District in Spotsylvania, and Nicole Cole from the Battlefield District down in Spotsy. She'll also be with us to talk about what they have done in this latest election to make sure that they put pro-democracy, pro-education people on that school board. So yeah, awesome. So I hope you're ready. You're cozied up. You got your coffee, because we have some show business to get to as well. And that is rules of the road. Use the chat. Tell us where you're at. If you're a teacher, if you are on a school board, if you ran for office, let us know. We want to know. Put your thumb up, pop up. We would love to see you in the room. But keep the chat friendly. You get nasty, we'll kick you out. After chat's going to be super important today, because we're going to roll this conversation right into the after chat. We have calls to action for education, because right now the General Assembly is talking about these education bills, and we need to make sure that we put some bad bills to bed and that we make sure that we protect the good bills. So prepare for that. And I know that Karin Chenoweth will stay with us from Democracy in Education. So if other guests can stay too, the after chat is going to be hopping. And if you see it in your heart today, support the show, become a patron. This is how we roll every week. This is how we do our work. And we are so thankful. We're so grateful. There's people in this room that support us. Thank you to our patrons. And thank you to the most newest one we have, Martha Trump. Thank you, Martha, for increasing your amount to support us. Love you, love you, love you. Thank you so much. So let's get our trailblazing pants on. Let's start this day with tequila.
tequila.
Bum, 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 bum. Okay, I can start dancing all day. So your kids have their snow boots on.
They sure do. They're outside sledding at our local middle school.
I love it. Well, I want to say hello, Lindsay Davis Stover. For folks in the room, she's a veteran of the Obama White House, and she was also where I really got to meet you when you ran for office back in 2018, and that CD10, which is up for election again and just as crowded as when you ran and your other co-founder, Allison Friedman. And I have to say, your background is so extensive. I can't even get into it here, but your heart is with a lot of the veteran policy you work on. But what your work really shows in your bio is how you center women and making sure you're empowering future leaders and making sure there's opportunities present. But today you're here because we consider you trailblazing in this entrepreneurship area where you've made this tequila 1953. Tell us about how you got this idea started and who's involved in it. Your girlfriend story, let's say.
Yes, that's great. Well, first of all, I want to start out by thanking you at Network Nova for all of the work you do here in Virginia, but honestly around the country. Thank you so much because it is so important. So thank you all for that. And two, just a little bit of fun. I know we all met on the campaign trail years ago, and it's interesting because a lot of my career has focused around ways to provide opportunities for women. And one of my co-founders and I, Allison Friedman, we actually ran against each other in the primary here in Virginia. And there were so many outrageous things that happen on a campaign trail, right? And we'd often laugh and joke with each other and say, one day we're going to have to sit and talk about this over tequila, right? And she and I became very close friends during that process. And afterwards, we would meet, several times a month at McLean Family Restaurant for breakfast. And one night, I stayed up all night with this idea of starting a tequila company. And I wanted to create something that women were leading at every level in a very male-dominated industry, both in Mexico, but also here in the US. And so I rolled into breakfast the next morning to meet Allison, and I said, Allison, you're one of the few people that can really tell me I'm crazy. So I need you to tell me I'm crazy. And I laid out this idea, and she said, you know what, this is my kind of crazy. Let's do it. And
I love it.
We joined forces with one of our dear friends, Shivam Shah, who's also an Obama administration alumni. And the three of us have started 1953 Tequila that is founded, farmed, distilled, and led by women at every single level.
That's amazing. I mean, just that alone, that seems like, is it possible in this kind of industry? So what happened when you started this? I know we talked about it, that you heard the word no a lot, and that sort of helped you.
It did. It did. We probably searched for the right partners in Mexico for over a year and a half. And, there aren't a lot of women to partner with in Mexico in the tequila industry, right? And so we really just cast a wide net to see who would be aligned with our values and who would be up for something like this that we wanted to do. And honestly, a lot of men told us no from the beginning, told us no here in the US, told us no in Mexico, told us that women couldn't farm agave, they couldn't lead agave fields. And that's really all we needed to hear was no. And the three of us flew down to Mexico, and we met our current partner now, who is, such a trailblazer in the tequila industry in Mexico. And we told her what we wanted to do. And, she said, well, it's never been done, but let's figure it out. And we knew right then and there we had met our partner who was aligned with our values, who wanted to make sure that what we put out in the world was friendly to the environment, that we, obviously treated our workers well, that we elevated women at every level, especially in untraditional areas, like the farming area.
Well, you had an article that was written about you. I love it. It was that being a disruptor. I mean, And that is amazing. I mean, you did, and why would, why people may not understand that the area of like alcohol in the sense of the business and the system, it really is kind of a male dominated system. So you were really seen as disruptors.
We have been, and while I think we're the first to do many things,
Right.
we're not the last, right? We hope that we blaze a trail for other women to follow. I mean, that is really, while we make exceptional tequila, in fact, it was
Mhm.
just named by the Men's Journal as the best additive-free tequila on the market. So we're very proud of our product, but we're also proud of ways in which we're changing the industry that hopefully
Right.
it's easier for women to move into these leadership roles. And Catherine, one of my favorite stories, and I know we talked about it on the phone, was, the fact that we kept getting a no. Women can't farm agave fields. They can't lead agave fields.
Right.
And we were determined to say, yes, we can. One, we'll show you. But
Yes.
two, we're going to find the right partners that want to take this on. And our partner in Mexico knew of an agave farmer who was wanting to retire.
Right.
And typically agave farms are passed on generationally to the sons in the family. And he only had daughters. And she went to him and said, if we can secure the purchase of agave, would you consider turning over your fields to your daughters? And, his daughters have been in the field since toddler. They knew
Wow. Right.
the industry inside and out. And, when we met with them, it was one of the most moving experiences I think we've had in this journey. Was, we asked him, we said, look, this is going to be hard. It's always hard to be the first and could be dangerous,
Yes.
and are you ready for this challenge? And their answer, Catherine, to us, I mean, literally moved us to tears. And they said, look, we've had a family meeting. We have the support of our husbands, of our father, of our families. And most importantly, we decided to take this on because there's a high school down the street from our farm. And we want to make sure those girls know they can lead and do whatever they want to do, even in the agave fields. And
Yeah.
it's just exceptional to see their work ethic and their commitment and the trail that they're blazing.
Yeah. And so where did you get just the idea of 1953? I know we talked about it, but it seemed like, again, you just really wanted to start from the beginning, from the intentionality of the design of the bottle, which is gorgeous, by the way,
Thank you.
to how you named it.
Yeah, 1953 is the year women secured the right to vote in Mexico. And so our tequila really honors the courage and tenacity of those women who pursued equality then and those who continue to pursue equality around the world today. So we were very intentional in the naming of our product. We were very intentional in the design of our product. We spoke to a lot of women bartenders, and
Ooh, I love that.
yeah,
What did
honestly,
they say? Everybody.
yes, the tequila, as you all probably know, I mean, the bottles are kind of short and fat and
Yeah.
hard to manage, right? And so we were very intentional with our bottle. We wanted to make sure it was a bottle that was easy for everyone to pour and enjoy. So,
Mm.
one, we wanted to create something sophisticated and beautiful and that could stand alone, but also we wanted it to be something that people would enjoy with their friends and family.
Yes. Well, I have to say, as we kind of wrap up this segment, thank you for coming on. It's just really great to hear a trailblazing story. I ordered a bottle myself that we will celebrate. We'll probably save it for maybe Women's History Month. I'm not sure with my team, but just the power when we work together, and especially your power of the friends you made, your girlfriends, and coming together. Really, it's amazing the change you could make, the impact you can have, and disrupting the system is really necessary. And we'll talk actually a little bit about that today. So thank you, Lindsay, for coming on, and good luck with everything. And tell Allison and the other co-founders hello. And we will just be making sure that we have tequila. Tequila. Oh my tequila. There we go. Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's so much. Yeah, have a great day with sledding that you'll be doing. You'll get your snow pants on. And speaking of disruptors, speaking of people that center also students, children in her life and the work that she does in her area, and I'm sure you have kids surrounding you today. Lindley Thorne from Rural Ground Game.
Hi, Catherine. Good to see you. Yes, I'm there in and out of the house, and I'm trying to stay locked in a quiet room and not worry about too much about the noises I'm hearing in the other room.
Yeah, I don't normally introduce you as a disruptor, but you are. I think what it means to me is that when we see something that's not working, some of the systems are failing us, or even those that are built don't include us. And we talked about the Democratic Party out in rural areas, maybe forgetting, not showing up. You have tried to build that back and build a team out there, and knowing that these candidates that were running for offices out there needed help. We see this today in the discussion when we'll talk about school board candidates. Maybe there wasn't that built around for certain reasons, but you really saw it and you acted on it, and you have built up with your team the Rural Ground Game. And so today, why I really wanted to ask you here today, because I know this is because of your heart is where your heart is in this. You wouldn't do this if you really, if it wasn't for just how deep it goes with the people you love around you and your community that you love. I know that. And I think what we see when we talk about these policies and these actions, that we don't sometimes really, it's good to talk about what to center the people that are the targets, the most vulnerable. We need to talk about how we need to protect those most vulnerable people. Students right now, LGBTQ students. And I wanted you to put a face on what's happening in Rockingham and Shenandoah, where school boards weren't so successful in getting pro education people on it, to put a face on that story.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. I think your theme today, and just looking at everyone's work and my previous awareness of them, is just recognizing that sometimes a thing that a community needs simply isn't there. And when people see that and are motivated to just dig in and roll up their sleeves and come together and make the thing happen that needs to happen, that's I think the conversation today. And just to here in Rockingham County, a week ago today was the deadline for teachers and school staff to report students who had in any way revealed to trusted teachers and staff that they would like to be identified by the pronouns that are true to them, or a name that is their truth. And what that means for a lot of kids here, including my own, is taking a walk the other evening, and my kids are very aware about what's happening, and getting the question, will I be in trouble with the police? And so then when you try to go and work through the science project or the math homework, none of that really matters, because if the place where you are meant to be nurtured enough to absorb information and be part of a community has so just decisively and by the book literally rejected you, it's very hard to be in a place where we can say that we are supporting education. And my child is absolutely supported by me, accepting and validating and filling out all the paperwork I can possibly fill out to make sure that they are recognized as they define themselves, because my children are not my property. They do not belong to me. They define themselves, and then it is my role to support them. But my child is afraid. And so to imagine what this must feel like for children who now know that for one full week, they are at risk. They may have revealed something to a school guidance counselor, to a teacher, And that information might come back to hurt them in real ways. And we know that when this happens, young people become homeless. There's so many different impacts, violence and self-harm, that become very, very real. And we've known about these model policies, but what's happening in Rockingham is implementation. And that's where we're at. And we know that Rockingham is not alone in facing this threat. And so now we have to be disruptive. We know that there are supportive teachers and school staff who are doing their best, but the rest of the community really needs to come together as well. And I'm starting to see that. I see Shannon is here on the call. Some other folks around other parts of Virginia facing the same things. So we're going to figure this out.
Yeah, it's almost, shocking in a way. I don't know, like shocking to the system when it feels like it happens so quickly. You see this change, and then right away, I was talking to Brad Skipper about Shenandoah, where they came in blazing with this idea they're going to start with school prayer, just sort of try to exclude people, ban 57, ban books, like you said, put these model policies out, and you see all of a sudden the community starts to wake up around it, and it really is not centering education and learning, right? And this is where I think the intent, and we'll talk to guests today, and I'm excited to have, I talked to Nicole Cole from Spotsylvania, and her story is really, to me, a story we need to pay attention to, because when she got on the board in 21, then she was surrounded by not anti-education people, and she sat there and said, well, what the heck am I going to do about this? And she did, and she acted on it and started to try to look around and find resources that weren't there, start to look around for help that wasn't there, and then said, I'm going to build it, damn it. And I think this is why having Betsy Connolly on, talking about her PAC, and also the story of Michael Cook. And then we'll start off with Karin Chenoweth talking about the organization she built, and all of us can join. And I think that's the key, is that we have to make it known, get the news out there, and then work together. And this is the work together to make sure that we send these people packing. Any last thoughts before and you're going to stay with me the whole time. I'm very grateful.
Yeah, no, I will be here. I think we all have so much to learn from each other, from people who have been engaged in this work. And we've already seen our most vicious member of school board stand down from his opening school board meetings with prayer. And so all of that is created by people who step up to apply pressure and pain to folks who are going after our kids in our schools to create this chaos. And we do see this pathway to ultimately
Capital One
have the communities we need.
Something on online. And
excuse me, could somebody mute that? Thank you. And I was laughing because it is Eileen Davis talking. And she'll be the first in the after chat. All right, Lindley. So let's go to our first guest, and stay with us. We'll wrap up together. I want you to be listening and see what your comments are at the end, if you can, if the kids aren't tugging on you and wanting some good sandwiches made. Let's bring up, and I'm very excited to have met and got to speak with Karin Chenoweth and talk about democracy and education. Welcome on the program.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is very exciting. You're a new group to me, and I'm just thrilled to know that you exist and you're doing such great work.
Well, I think this is, I'll just start at the end, in the sense of the solution is what we're going to do is be working together, because I really believe that is the cure. And then actually planning, strategizing ways to do it. And so today, just so we'll open up, I want to talk about why you formed this organization, and this, because you saw this need. Your background is quite extensive in education. And I think that what makes you unique, your lens, that you spent over 20 years really just understanding how schools work, what makes a good school, why some schools maybe are failing. So you have a really great background in just really wanting to make sure schools are functioning. You get it. Let's start with why that then you decided to move from that to start an organization to help candidates running for school board. Give us the background of how you got here?
Well, as you say, I spent a long time. I'm a longtime reporter and education writer, and I worked for a national education advocacy organization, Education Trust, and my job there was to find and learn from high-performing and improving schools and districts that serve children of color and children from low-income backgrounds. And so I've studied what makes a school functional, what makes a school dysfunctional, and I decided to retire at the end in May of 2022, and I happened to meet Michael Cook at the last Ed Trust conference that I went to, and he was on a parent advocacy panel, and he said he was planning on running for school board in Plano, Texas. And I just thought, here's the kind of person we want running for school board. He's a very accomplished guy. He's smart. He cares about all kids, and this is great. And so I asked him, I said, well, how are you learning about schools and education and how to run for school board? And he said, well, I have a lot to learn there. And he named a couple of local organizations that were helping him. And I said, well, that's great. I'll find you some national resources. And I was very confident in this. I've been working at a national level. And then I started looking, and I really couldn't find very much.
Right.
There are some school board associations. They don't really provide much information or help to candidates. Whatever help they do provide is to school board members, and it's not fabulous, but they certainly don't look to increase the competition for members, right? For their members. Right. So they're not providing. So finally, Chris Amundsen, who some of you may know, she was a Fairfax School Board member, a delegate, and she ran the National Association of State Boards of Education for many years. She finally said to me, there is nothing, you're going to have to do it.
That's always nice, right? Yeah, but this is what people in this room have heard, and like you have stepped up to do something about it. So where did you start?
So I started by learning how to build a website.
Oh, that's, yeah.
I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and I wrote a bunch of one-page briefs that I thought were on topics that school board candidates needed to know something about: reading instruction, school finance, different topics. I produced 2 podcasts, one 5 episodes just on how to run for school board.
Right, just how to run.
I actually took the model from one of the right-wing organizations that had what I thought was a pretty good podcast on how to run for school board. I thought, I'll just steal the structure, and we Chris Amundsen and I did it, and I started looking for people, because the fact is I don't know anything about running for school board. I know something about schools and education. I know nothing about running for school board. So I conceived of democracy and education as being sort of a vessel for folks to share their questions, their expertise, and kind of be a community that supported each other and could really help each other along. And of course, I mean, I'm learning something about campaigning, but I can't claim any expertise on that.
Well, you identified the issue, and I think that is important, and wanting to build this community, which people should know. You have a forum, people could join this, and this is where you're really building a place where people can exchange ideas and information. So talk to us now, like we're in the sense of candidate training or those kind of resources. Are you working on those as well? Is that part of, and recruiting?
Yeah, so we're trying to build a campaign toolbox, so to speak.
Right.
So how to start a PAC, how to do a door knocking campaign, how to door knock, how to do interviews, how to, how to make a campaign video. So
Right.
we're building this as we go. We built some stuff in 2023. Michael helped with building out a campaign schedule the last 4 months.
Right.
What do you do kind of month by month? And so a lot of those resources are just in our private forum,
Right.
but most of our resources are just public. I just want everybody to be able to access them.
Yeah, which is good. And I think this is a great time to we'll build on this in conversation to get down to the nitty gritty, because I think it's a good time to bring Michael Cook up. Michael, welcome. You're a school board member at Plano, Texas, and reading your article when you stepped up in your own school district because of your story. Why don't you tell the audience your story when the CRT stuff started to drop and you as a parent listening and seeing what's happening? Tell us your story and the genesis of it, and then maybe you can distill some of what you did. We really want to learn about how that journey got you elected, what you did. But tell us your personal story.
Yeah, sure. So my wife and I moved to Texas about 6 years ago at this point. We were trying to find the right schools for our kids. We have three very different kids. Our oldest daughter has special needs, and then we have we have twins. And so we went to, we initially had them in private school. We were moving them to public school. And as we were making the move, we wanted to get more involved. So we went to a CRT discussion led by a current board member, school board member. We honestly didn't know what to expect. So we went there, and it was definitely not at all what we were expecting. It was it was the school board member actually explaining how CRT was in our schools, how we should be concerned about it, how all the parents should be up in arms and fighting it. And, my wife pushed back a little at that presentation. And it was really not the time for that. So we experienced, let's just say we experienced some discomfort, and we were definitely a minority in the audience in multiple senses. And so we left there really with sort of a conviction to say, hey, if we're going to send our kids to public school, we need to, it can't be this. It's got to be different than this. We need our kids focused on student achievement. We don't need fear mongering and other things. And so for us, it was, how do we decide what can we do to improve the situation? And so my wife decided that she was going to do some education advocacy with the NAACP in our area. And then we sort of decided that I would run for school board. I had no idea what that meant. I had not run for any office ever. I had, the PTA was like the best I had done, and I was never even officer on that. So when we decided to run, I was lucky enough that someone from Ed Trust, actually Karin's organization, saw my story and invited me to this conference where I spent 3 days learning all that there is to know that you don't know. And so I was really, post that conference, I was very overwhelmed, because not only did I not know about education or education policy, but I also did not know how to run a campaign. And so that was really sort of where Karin and I intersected. And as she was sort of building this plane, I was certainly using some of those materials to help with my campaign. But that's really how it started. And I think over time, as I got more comfortable, I found a number of local organizations that helped me on the education policy front really get up to speed quickly in education policy. And I spent a lot of time understanding what makes a good education for children. And then on top of that, I also spent some time figuring out the whole campaign thing. For me, it was much more about, okay, how do I craft a message that relates to other parents like me? I can't imagine everyone would go to that CRT thing and come away thinking, yep, that's what I want for my school district. So how do I craft a message of what parents actually want? It wasn't so much about sort of dealing with the crazy issues, but more about just getting down to the grassroots of like, when you send your kid to school, you want them to be safe and you want them to learn. Like those are the two things that people want. And regardless of everything else, if you can stick to that message, it works.
Yeah.
And so with that combined with, I would say, significant help from both Karin and a local PAC that was basically started to help us with our campaigns, we were able to actually our slate was able to sort of make a clean sweep of all the offices that we ran.
Yeah, let's back that up a little bit, because I think in this room, when we're really trying to find out like what's in that toolbox, what worked. And I just want to make clear, and Karin, you made clear when we talked, there's not one thing that works for every race, and there's different areas, different messages. I think though there is some underlying infrastructure that can really help. I mean, obviously the help the candidates need. We hear that all the time. There's no training. We can certainly provide that resources, but then there's some interesting strategies that I want you to talk about, the PAC and the slate and how that worked. And also it's not, I don't know if the partisan thing comes into it, how you can dispel that and run with a motto that's really focused on the learning and the kids. Talk about that, because I think that's what people are really interested in. We say, how do we send them packing? How did you send them packing? How did you do it?
Yeah, so first, establishing a slate was really important. School board, in our area, school board is nonpartisan. And so we found the best 3 school board candidates that we felt like really shared our overall values.
Right.
We had on the school board side of things, we had 1 Republican, 2 Democrats. And then we also combined with the city council. They were all Republican, but we found ones that supported school systems, and we all got on the same slate together. Being on a slate is helpful for a number of reasons. There are just a bunch of blocking and tackling things you have to do. So like putting up signs, getting signs printed, going door knocking.
Right.
You can extend your reach if you have 6 different people door knocking instead of you just trying to door knock all the doors, right? And so starting that sort of coalition with the slate made a huge difference in the reach we were able to get. And then the PAC really helps to organize the slate. So the PAC would help us say, for example, hey guys, let's all go to door knocking Saturday at 10 o'clock. And so
Right.
we can get everybody together. You all go out, you all take different areas. We're able to get a van, which is a software that helps us identify target neighborhoods.
Right.
And that was helpful. Having a slate that was bipartisan was also helpful. So we had both moderate Republicans, moderate Democrats on the same slate. So we didn't really have that sort of a partisan issue. I think where the unique thing really comes down to the message. For me, I was able to craft a message that really resonated for me, that I was able to share authentically, right? I have 3 young kids in school right now. And I can tell you exactly how I feel as a parent,
Right.
and what I want for my kids. And I think that even on our slate, the messages were all different. But at the end of the day, they were all centered on we want the best for kids, and we want to focus on student achievement.
Yeah.
And I think that when it came to forums and other things, there were lots of other people on the other side of us that were trying to bring up other issues. But even in the most conservative forums, the education and student achievement resonated, because before people care about transgender bathrooms or CRT or all those other things, they care about their kids learning to read, write, and do math.
Yeah.
And really sort of distilling that in our message, I think is what really helped us.
And what was that overall motto? I think it struck me as it not Democrat, not Republican, but Panthers or something like that. Was there something in that motto?
Yeah, there were a number of those kinds of things.
I like that though, because it really centers that about the school than it does this partisan idea looking for, because I think in some areas it's you're gonna work with pro education candidates, whether they're independents, Republicans, or whatever. It's people that care about education, they care about public education, they have the same value set, because that if they win, that's a win for kids. And we love that. So right now, I'd love to bring up Betsy Connolly to add to this group, because I know you all know each other and you work together. Great to see you, Betsy. I have to say that your story is awesome as well. And you are from the Conejo Valley area, Southern California, right?
Yes. So, right. Conejo actually.
Conejo,
is
yeah.
way
Conejo,
you
sorry.
pronounce that word, and means rabbit. We're Rabbit Valley. Yep.
Yeah, Rabbit Valley. That's fitting, right? All busy, busy, but busy. So I love what I love about your story. I want to add to Michael's, because I think we're getting into some good discussions, because yours is not just a one win. You've been able to hold the school board now in a strong pro-education stance for 3 cycles. Talk about how you got here, and then similarly what you did to make sure that the school board was held by people that cared about public education.
Sure. So I was on my local school board for 8 years in a very traditional role, elected in a traditional role. And we had differences of opinion on the board. We had some conservative members, but 8 years in, the third right-wing candidate was elected to the board. And overnight, everything changed. And that was a really tough time for me, because I tried to sound the alarm in the 6 months leading up to the 2016 election. And I was angry post-election at the people that I felt should have worked harder and not stepped away from the ugliness of the campaign. And so I rolled up into a ball, as so many of us did in 2016, and stayed there for a little while. And then I had this experience where people kept reaching out to me privately and saying, "What are we going to do?" And I started out by saying, "I don't know why you're asking me," or "Who's we? Where were you 2 months ago?" I mean, I was really mad. And but after 3 or 4 months, I was less mad, and people kept asking, and I realized that somebody was going to have to step in, and it was probably going to be me. And so what I did is I reached out to players in the community, influencers, we would now call them, and I brought everyone together in a secret meeting in a secret place. And we actually called ourselves SOS, Save Our Schools, and our nickname was the Smoke-Filled Room. People were in that room who had never been in that space with each other before. So leaders in local political organizations, teachers union people, state teachers union people, educators who were hiding their affiliation. And we basically hashed out this incredibly painful effort to identify 3 and only 3 candidates for the next election. So this was happening in March for November. And it was a terrible process, very painful. And it wasn't uncommon for people to say to me after the meeting, "I don't think I can keep doing this." And I would say to them, "Well, we'll be back here again in 2 weeks, and come or don't come, but the process will continue." And so as we went through this process of examining the 6 or so potential candidates and trying to decide who we could all get behind, one of those candidates was Mary Ann Van Zyl, my co-founder of the Caneo Together PAC. And I loved her. I had never met her before, but some of the people in the smoke-filled room did not. Mm-hmm. And she had been critical of certain aspects of the school where her kids attended. And the teachers union people basically blackballed her in this process. Just a really tough thing. So Marianne, after rolling up in a ball for a short period of time, she approached me and she said, I will give you the $10,000 that I have raised so far. This was like very early in June. I'll give you the $10,000 on one condition. I want inside the smoke-filled room. So we met and we talked about it, and we decided it was time to retire SOS and to start a PAC. And that's what we did in June in the lead up to the election. That's how that happened. It was just her and me, right, and $10,000. And so we began this process of helping the candidates that had been identified during the painful whittling down process. And so we formed the PAC, and we tried to do is we tried to identify what the candidates, the three of them, were lacking. Right. So for instance, we were coming up to the filing deadline in the middle of the summer, end of July, and they didn't have photos, right? All they had was one headshot, right, somebody took in their kitchen, and we're like, well, this isn't good. And right, remember, I was still on the board. I had been on the board. I knew what they needed, and they didn't have, their websites didn't have any photos on it. And we have to put 3 words on the ballot. So right, at the top, right, you have to say the 3 things you are: veterinarian, college instructor, like that. And you only get 3 words, and they didn't have their words. They didn't understand what was allowed in election law to put there. We get to put 150-word statement. Their statements didn't make any sense. It was like that.
You did a lot of that, yes.
And so we jumped in immediately where we saw the need. So we organized at my home a photo session where we had a volunteer, very excellent wedding photographer, and we invited about 75 people. Everyone signed a release form. We had kids, we had old people, all kinds, and we basically created thousands of campaign photos all in one day in one place. Yes. And we had a videographer. They made videos like that. Yeah. Right. So we gave them what we saw they needed. Yeah.
So let's fast forward then. You start building this. You start to realize, you just start to fill in what candidates need, and you start to work on that. And so then you were able to hold this board now for 3 years, because I want to bring up our next round of guests as well to tell their story. So I know we have to watch our time, sure, but I want to tell the audience that we will be continuing this conversation in the after chat. So just get to that, your basic points. You had successes, and just give us some of those really that worked well for you to get to the point where sure, you'll be able to hold it and flip it.
So we developed a template. And we have used it every cycle since then. We have phase 1, where we recruit candidates, assess their viability, and put them in front of small focus groups to get feedback on their messaging.
Right.
Then in phase 2, we choose the top 3 and convince the other ones not to run. The next phase is we provide key tools and advice to our endorsed candidates. And then the last phase is we run a parallel campaign, and that allows us to do two things. One, we get a unified message because now we're in trustee areas, so we don't have at-large elections anymore, and so
Right.
but we create a unified, recognizable campaign across the community, and then we mail and focus and target in each trustee area that's up for
Oh,
election.
that's great.
And
man.
then we also run the entire negative campaign. So none of the candidates have to ever say anything about their opponents. We do it for them.
I love that. And let's keep that thought there. Jill, you do that. I just love that. It's such a nugget. Let's bring up, and if everybody can stay with us, I want to bring up Nicole Cole, because because she and you need to talk. Nicole Cole is in the district. Hello, Nicole. And also, let's just get everybody on the screen. Larita Daniels, let's bring her up, also from Spotsy. But Nicole, you're from the Salem district. And when I spoke to you, again, I'm wondering what Betsy's words are resonating with you. Hello, Nicole, and your story. I think people will be interested what happened to you in 21. So go right to it.
Absolutely. You know, how Betsy started out was basically the thought process that I had after winning my election in November of 2021 and starting on what was a now majority anti-public education Trumper school board in January of 2022. Where at the first meeting they terminated in a FOIA violated closed meeting our superintendent, who had already submitted his separation, and they had voted for his separation in December. So that started the nightmare, which was the past 2 years. You know, after sort of getting through the distractions and everything that they were doing and could do now that they had the majority. So I'd say probably about 5 to 6 months in, it just became very clear that I had to figure out what I could do in the background that did not require a school board vote in order to make the change that we needed to be able to either make things that they were doing transparent and start making the effort towards changing the makeup of the board for the next election, which was November of 2023. So I basically pulled together or reached out to a number of people who were being advocates in our community, and had networks in the community who were standing up for things, but individually in our community, and said, okay, I'm going to pull together a core team of these people and present the idea of us creating an organization similar to Betsy. We ended up creating it as a PAC so that we could raise funds and have a mission to actually do some good things in the community. But one of the other reasons was because that I did this as a different organization than the organizations that already existed in the community, like the Spotsy Dems or the NAACP,
Right.
was because during my election and campaign, I didn't get support from these organizations. The Republicans support, you know, they identify bad, unqualified candidates, and they fund them significantly to make sure that they win these seats so that they can do their work, right? And we didn't have the same force on the other side at all. I thought that NAACP or the Dems would be that, and it wasn't during my campaign. So I knew that didn't exist. And I knew that for 2023, we wouldn't be able to win this board back if there wasn't a strong organization that was focused on supporting candidates, whether they needed to be independent or Democrat, or even Republican, but clearly pro-public education. We needed to support them with funding. We needed to find them, like what Betsy did, because no organization was actually going out there finding good candidates to run against them. So we started SSPS PAC, and a couple of our members are on, and so they'll put some of the information in the chat. But SSPS PAC supporters of Spotsylvania Public Schools, and we identified 3 of the candidates that were going to be running sort of newly for one of the 4 districts that was in the race for 2023. And then Dr. Daniels was already an incumbent, but she was a SSPS PAC endorsed candidate. And we also had to find candidates for our board of supervisors, because I think, one thing that people don't understand and don't get that they need to is that at least in our area, in Virginia, the board of supervisors funds the school division. Yes. And we can't tax ourselves. So we have to also have board of supervisors members who are pro-public education and will vote to give us the funding that we need to do the work for our kids. And so we also, we basically focus on both local elections. We found 2 candidates for board of supervisors. One was an incumbent, so we endorsed her. And unfortunately, we only won the incumbent race, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to try again in 2025. But that was the work, and basically you have to do this work in the background because they will attack you. They were attacking individuals. We had to be there for these candidates that we had identified and were supporting, to encourage them along the way and encourage them to stay in it, because they were fearful of getting attacked by the extremists on the other side, and had to, let them know that they could do this. They were going to have the support, and we needed them. Things weren't going to change if we didn't have good people in the majority, especially on our school board, but on school board and board of supervisors. So that was the work that we did, and I've during the past 2 years, I and one of my fellow board members, Don Shelley, we were asked by Albemarle because they had a threat, similar threats in their community. We're willing, SSPS PAC members, myself, we're willing to go to other areas and talk and help to help other communities. What's the work that you need to do?
I love that. And that is exactly what we hope we can build out of this today. So I want to jump over. Thank you, Nicole. First of all, to Betsy and Michael and Karin in the room. And is that what I love about the story, and with everybody on this call, is when you see something, you stood up and you did something. And I do believe that is the start. We need champions. We need leaders in the community. We need parents. We need students. And Betsy, I loved the video that you made. It's on your website that brings all those activists and students and parents together and talks about that kind of the love of the public school and love of each other. It's so powerful. So Loretta, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you.
As being part of this PAC and trying to work together, we also, when we were talking about the importance of, when we talk about send these extremists packing, some things came to mind when you were really out there on the ground knocking doors. Tell us about your thoughts on why it's so important to have that voter engagement when you're on that level, to really talk to parents and voters.
Good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for, it's always a delight to embrace this virtual stage. And I know, at the end of the day, we sorry about that.
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So at the end of the day, we are listening to one another with providing knowledge. So I'll just talk about what happened in my campaign. As I think about this, at the end of the day, it is my face that's on my campaign that people are going to see. And I want to, and that let that resonate with people for a while, because as they go into the voting booth or at the polls, they're taking my face. So we have to be the face of that particular my campaign. So these are 3 words that help, that I want to just kind of put out there that described what happened when I was in my campaigning: resilient, co-collaborated, and a sense of trust. I stayed focused and resilient despite the messaging that was going out there. One of the messages, the narrative that was out there, we need to get rid of everyone on that school board. We don't want anybody coming back. Remember, we had 9 candidates total vying for 4 seats, including 2 incumbents who were running for re-election. 2 were not running for re-election, but hearing this message helped me kind of sketch out a campaign plan for me. So I knew that I had to demonstrate why my knowledge, skills, and insights were necessary on this board. So I didn't give up. I can remember going out knocking on doors with my volunteers. I was knocking on one end, they were knocking on the other end. When my volunteer came to me and said to me, this particular house or people in this house, they're not voting for you, because they said they want everybody on the school board gone, no matter who was coming back. They just didn't want them sitting
Right.
there. So I sat for a few minutes to gather my composure and said to myself, and of course I was kind of like taken aback, because I'm like, I'm an educator. Why wouldn't you want me to come back, right? So I went to this individual house personally, and I asked him, I told him about me. I stood there and I convinced him why I was the best candidate. So I took this candidate-centered appeal to him. I said, this is why you should vote for me. 20 plus years in education, my teaching at-risk children, my time as a PTO president and mom. I talked about why I ran in the first place, which was to ensure all children were thriving in our schools, and by extension, our special education children, because I was a special education parent with a child who was currently in school. So I knew I needed to take my approach and say, this is why you needed to vote for me. And to me, that was a story that I remember to this day, that he told me, you convinced me. I'm going to ask the 4 other people in my household to also vote for you. But that was important for me to hear, because I'm like, I'm an educator. Why wouldn't you want me to return back to the school board? But of course, that was a story that was out in the community, that because of the chaos that was on the board, they wanted everybody
to go. Well, it reminds me of Michael's story. And Michael, maybe we can all have a wrap up by having a takeaway. I want to go to you, Michael. When you hear that story, I think both having special needs kids in the school system and what was at risk. I mean, is there anything you can add to what today, as before we roll into the after chat, is what are some of the takeaways when we really think about, have we come up with the playbook that can really, put us on the offensive? What are some of your thoughts?
Well, I think I would just give 3 quick takeaways. A, educate yourself. So really understand the office you're in for. Spend some time actually looking at policies in your district. Go to meetings. Talk to all the people who have been in those offices, so you know what you're doing. You sound reasonable. 2, be authentic. Make your message your own. Really understand why you're running, and leverage that into a really strong, succinct message for folks. And then 3. Find the right coalition of folks to run with you, because running by yourself is really, really hard. And if you can find like-minded folks, not only when you run, it'll help, but also when you win, it'll help you actually get things done.
Yeah, those are really great takeaways. Hope we will be writing those down, and they will be. Remember, everybody in this room, we're running a little over, so stay with us, because you don't want to miss us in the after chat. Betsy, and that sense of some takeaways before we wrap up, especially when we talk about when you do lose the majority, you didn't take your toys and went home, you did something about it. In the sense of what actions people and candidates that can do to stay engaged, or what are some points that you'd like to leave the room with today?
Well, I think Michael's got it right, that you really need to become part of a team. And if there isn't a team to join, you have to make one. And that tying together like-minded candidates and like-minded elected officials and people in the community tying them together in people's minds is incredibly important strategy for elections and also for governing. And it is always about the relationships.
I love that. And Nicole, I really think when we talked, the thing that really struck me was when you really saw and looked around that these groups and institutions that you think should be helping you, from the Dem Party to local committee, I don't think we still have solved that yet. So maybe, or what are your thoughts on what we're going to do, or what you think you want to keep doing to build so we can recruit candidates so that you could actually, like Betsy did, win again?
Yeah, so I'd say two things. One, because we created the PAC and the success that we were having identifying candidates, and we did hosted some community conversations so people would know who we are, and which were things that the Dems and the NAACP, other organizations, weren't doing. So when we started doing that, they started doing more too.
Great.
Right? So that's one thing. And then to partner with them, the more we work together, the better we are. So then your organization can partner with them. The other piece of it too is, I would say, if you are an elected official already, that was the other thing that I noticed, that we need to understand that when you win your race, especially if you are still in the minority, or even if you're now have the vote, you have to help other people to win the race so that you can stay with the people who, or you can have the predominant amount of people who are pro-public education candidates, right?
Right.
You can't be like, okay, well, I'm an elected official, I'm not going to be political and help anybody else to get on this board.
Right.
I would not have been able to have any type of effect for my this last 2 years if we didn't get those 4 people to win their races.
Yeah.
If I hadn't done this work.
And I think that is like breaking the mold or the barrier. I know that it's sometimes hard because how we've operated, even when I first got into this as an activist, not going down and helping different areas. They're like, well, why are you going down to Virginia Beach? You live in Fairfax. It's really breaking down what people used to. It's not working. We have to, and I think when we're talking about fighting back authoritarianism, we have to change. These people are going to find any weakness and come at us. I'm so grateful what you did. And Larita, just to wrap up before we go, I would back to Karin and then go into after chat. The sense of centering this student, or your last thoughts on really what's at risk, what's at stake here in your mind when this is about public education. What are some thoughts around these students?
So one focus, I just want to make sure that, again, we talked about relationship building, right?
Yes.
It is so critically important to build relationships, but just keep in mind, you have to be invited to the table as well, right? We have to be invited to the table, incumbent or not. If we're not invited to the table, then that leaves an open for the extremists.
What table are you talking about?
The table in terms of in the school setting,
yes.
and as Miss Cole talked about earlier, if you're not invited into the conversations, if our students are not invited into the conversation, then they're all left out, right?
Yes.
And so that is critically important, even though you have people sitting there. And we talk about this in terms of diversity, inclusion. Those 2 terms matter. If they don't feel included, then they will not come to the table. And so I'll just make that very clear.
That's
anybody that's starting a PAC, starting any kind of organizations, you have to invite the constituents. You have to invite the people to the table that you want their voices heard.
Yeah.
And so that includes students.
I think we leave students out a lot, I have to say, and this is their world and their time. And Karin, I know we're going to roll into the after chat, and people are going to looking forward to line up to ask us questions. So thank you for staying. What is your last word on what you've heard today? Are you excited? Democracy and freedom is just starting off, maybe with new members that will come in from this show today. But you're on mute, so unmute yourself.
Yeah, no, I would just ask this group that exists here now, you know, people who are thinking of running, who are on school boards, you know, people who are working on school board campaigns across the country, your college roommate, your, you know, childhood friend, whoever. Let them know about us. You know, almost as I say, a lot of our resources are public. It's www.assistdemocracy.org. And if they're interested and they support public education, they should join. They should fill out the form on the Connect page and sign up for the forum, and that gives you access to a very rich, deep conversation.
Awesome. So this is great. So stay with us for the after chat. If any of the guests can stay, thank you so much, Dr. Daniels, Nicole Cole, and also Betsy Connolly, Michael Cook, and Karin Chenoweth, and also a little tequila that we have with Lindsay Davis Stover. We're gonna. I want to end the show talking about a few show business. Next week, we have a great show. We will talk about collaborating across the nation. We'll have Heather Booth here and 3 awesome, badass women who started a collective grassroots project to actually do the same thing we're talking about here, working together to beat back the authoritarianism that's going to be coming, especially with this upcoming election. After watching the Iowa caucus, there's so much going on. But next week's going to be great. So make sure you tune in and make sure you support the show. Yeah. Today, what a great day. You like what you see? Well, keep it going. Become a subscriber, become a patron. We love our patrons. Thank you for that. And thank you for the great team today. We will roll into the after chat. We will start off with Lindley Thorne, and then we will also want to talk about our calls to action for education with Stair Calhoun and Dennis Orchinger. Thank you for joining. Let's roll credits.